came out of an abusive relationship.
My husband and I, we were having a lot of problems.
He was a very controlling person, possessive, jealous, insecure.
He became very violent one night.
It was affecting my kids.
They heard their father hitting me and yanking my hair.
I was close to suicidal.
I didn't know whether I should stay or whether I should go.
When you're in there, it's kind of hard to see outside of it.
I had less than $4 in my pocket.
I left, didn't turn back.
I took the kids and ran.
It took me strength and courage to do it.
Not everybody I expected to be there for me has been there. God's always been there, and through Him I'm healing.
Taking that first step in wanting to change your life, it makes a big difference.
I'm not taking abuse anymore.
Domestic violence continues to be on the increase, both in the general population and, unfortunately, even within the church. But when it happens within the church, it is so devastating because not only does it go directly against the very character of God, the church is the very place that people should be able to come to find safety and security.
We want the church to be a sanctuary of safety, a place of hope and healing, to help people with the wounds that they've experienced and to help them with the violence and evil that we find so prevalent in our culture today.
That should be the goal of every one of our churches.
If I was to define domestic violence, I would say it is a pattern of controlling behaviors whereby one individual is seeking to have power and control over another without regard for their individual rights.
Domestic violence is something that is somehow gaining ground on us in many ways, in our culture specifically, if not around the world.
It cuts across all income levels, all races, it cuts across all occupations, and it cuts across all religious beliefs as well.
Anyone can be a victim of abuse by anyone. It can happen to people who are old or young. It can happen to men or to women, to children, to adults. It can happen in a lot of different contexts, a lot of different settings.
We have stereotypes of what we think a family that has domestic violence in it looks like. Well, it happens to any kind of family, be it rich or poor, ethnic or all-American. Domestic violence is out there. And I think that probably education is the big thing. People really don't know how prevalent it is and how many women and children are suffering because of it.
Recently, the North Pacific Union did a survey, a union-wide survey, to ascertain the prevalence of domestic violence in our church. The survey results were this, that we are on par with the world. The statistics are the same.
The church as a whole has put its head in the sand about this thing. It doesn't happen within the church. That's a world issue. And it's just now accepting the fact that, yes, it is a church issue, you know, with surveys showing that the statistics parallel in the church as outside of the church. So, you know, to be able to sit in church on a given Sabbath morning and look around and know that at least 1/3 of the women around you are victims of abuse or have been at some point in their life.
There's hardly a family anymore that I know that hasn't been impacted in some way by some kind of domestic violence somewhere. I mean, we've all got the skeletons in our closets, and you know, we just need to get beyond the point where we're saying, well, that happens out there in the world, but it doesn't happen here. That's not being truthful, and it's time we get beyond the denial.
I think the church has been guilty in the past sometimes of ignoring these problems because we were ashamed that it would happen within the church. But I think the credibility of the church is enhanced when people realize we're willing to help them and we're willing to realize that in this evil world, horrible things happen, and the church is there to help.
There needs to be a comfort level as we deal with this issue for people to understand it's a sin issue, and we need to work together to end it in our homes and in our churches.
I would hope that all of our churches were prepared to respond to issues of domestic violence with sensitivity and insight, and facilitate a healing environment where people can find the help and assistance to get out of that cycle of violence.
The church is the place for restoration. They need to focus on restoration, teaching, safety, and forgiveness.
If victims can know that they can turn to their faith community with their children, and that they will be listened to, and that they will be believed, and that the faith community will respond with wisdom and compassion, then that's absolutely wonderful. The best scenario for victims and their children.
I have talked to at least one other pastor's wife who thought that there wasn't a place within the church, and so and I was about to go outside the church also for help. But it's a very healing thing if most of the hurt has come from church leaders in your life, to have healing from the church itself.
They're not people to be thrown away. They're not to be thrown away as shelter gypsies going from shelter to shelter, but the church should be there to help them.
They can find healing. They can find a place where secrets are kept, where confidentialities are kept, and where they can grow and heal.
I do a lot of education in churches, and over the last 6 months, I can tell you that every single time I have been in a church, someone who has experienced domestic violence comes up to me afterwards and shares their story. And so that tells me that every single church is dealing with domestic violence, and they need to educate themselves, and they need to respond in a caring and loving way.
We are encouraging churches to become healing centers and training groups of lay people who are able to facilitate support groups and provide environments that are conducive to openness.
People assume that we can't talk about painful things in church. Church is a nice place. We don't speak about things that are painful and hurtful in church. We don't like to recognize that we're all saints and all sinners at the same time.
Words are very powerful, and even though there is a risk involved using words like domestic violence and abuse from the pulpit, when you think about the lives that you can impact and the healing that can begin, it's a risk well worth taking.
And so the more that we can say the words family violence or domestic partner violence or spouse abuse, that may bring someone forward who could be experiencing that. And they say, oh, we get to talk about things like that in the church.
And I think our ultimate goal as pastors is to provide every individual with a climate in which they can grow spiritually, emotionally, and physically in a safe environment.
We've taken the position as the Upper Columbia Conference that we need to train our pastors to be proactive in this area of domestic violence.
And pastors need to be aware of the fact that this is an issue they will deal with in their churches.
With any of the pastors that I've worked with so far, it's just obvious that it's a lack of education in this area. You know, once they understand the dynamics of what's going on, then our pastors become some of our best allies for these ladies.
Pastors are the first responders oftentimes. This is a safe haven for many families. So it's really important that they understand the dynamics.
He must or she must feel it expedient for them to educate themselves, to avail themselves of resources, and of course utilize whatever's in their power to help the parishioner in their healing process.